All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show. One of my favorite days of the year is when Louis T stops by. We try to get him as many times as possible. He knows that. The greatest doing it on YouTube. Incredible. What's happening, my brother?
Cut that out, Doug. I appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's always a blast chopping it up with you, so I always look forward to it as well.
I was telling George, have you been on the pod with George before, Louis?
No, I have not. This will be my first time.
So one of my favorite things is no need for show sheets, no need for questions. We're just going to get on here and talk ball.
That's right.
That's what I love about these episodes.
Yeah.
Louis, the schedule came out. I'm not one of these that starts worrying about wins and losses in May, but there were some curious things on the schedule. First time in a long time they don't have a season opener at home.
Right.
It's another late bye, if you will. They've got the Thursday that kind of fixes in there. Not necessarily as far as the wins and losses go, but was there anything on the schedule that stuck out to you?
So obviously the start to the season was interesting because the first, I want to say it was 3 out of 4, maybe even 4 out of 5 were on the road. I think it was 3 out of 4 were on the road, which, like you said, we haven't had a road week 1 game since 2019. So that was something that I think I was expecting, though. I had predicted that the first game would be on the road. I don't think this is as tough of a schedule as I was expecting it to be. But I do think, much like last year, there is a pocket that you have to take advantage of. And I hate saying that because who are we to say that we're supposed to beat someone? I always tell people all the time, when people look at their schedule, we're the team they're circling as a win, right? Like, we better beat them, right? So 100%. Who are we to look at someone and say, hey, we need to beat the Bears or the Panthers or the Giants, right? Like, those teams are circling us on the calendar and say, hey, we better beat the Commanders, right? So I do think there were a couple of things that stood out to me. One, for the second year in a row, we don't play Dallas until after week 12. So 12 and 18 again, right? I think it was the exact same way last year. Week 12 was Thanksgiving and week 18 was the final game of the season. So for the second year in a row, they did that again. It almost, I said this when I did my schedule release, it felt like they kind of copied and pasted our schedule from last year. Like, they almost got to the very end of the schedule and it was like, oh, we forgot to do the Commander schedule. Okay, yeah, just give them the week 14 bye again. Give them the week 12 against Dallas. Give them week 18 against, you know what I'm saying? Like, kind of.
Do you like Thursday night game? Do you like the Thanksgiving games?
I don't. I like to enjoy my Thanksgiving in peace.
Actually. I agree.
That means you're assuming that they're going to lose every time.
Yes, that is facts. Now, as we get better, right, and we become a really good team, I won't mind going and destroying their Thanksgiving. Absolutely. But for where we've been, no, I'm fine. Let me enjoy my Thanksgiving in peace.
They are only 2 primetime games, George. I don't think that necessarily surprised me. As you know, the beard's gray. I'm old.
You've been there.
Anyway, yeah, I've been dead by then. Are you surprised we didn't get more primetime games with the number 2 overall pick?
No, I'm not. I predicted 2 primetime games. Like, you have to earn primetime games. And we haven't. 1, we got 2 primetime games, which is what I expected. And 2, neither one of them are at home. You know, we don't win primetime games at home. We usually embarrass ourselves like we did against the Bears last year on primetime at home. So they said, we'll give you your 2 primetime games. You've earned that, you know, being in the market that you're in. You play in the NFC East. You knew one of them was going to be against an NFC East team, right? Didn't know if it was going to be the Giants or the Eagles. I didn't think it would be the Cowboys unless it was Thanksgiving. And they spared us this year. And then I was not expecting Cincinnati in week 3.
Right.
In the jungle. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, wow. Like,
I was surprised they didn't give us the Bears game. I thought it was going to be Caleb versus Jayden. I was surprised by that.
You know, we had talked about that, and I said I don't think they're going to do it 3 years in a row because it wasn't a fun game 3 years in a row. It was actually a pretty bad game the last 2 years. The year before, it was a great finish. The game was awful, right? It was 12-7. Like, it was a terrible game to watch. And so I was like, I didn't think they would run it back last year. I was shocked that they said, hey, 12-7 is great. Let's do it again, right? This time at their place. Like, I didn't think they would do it last year. So I said, you know what? The year that they should do it, they're not going to do it because that would make it 3 years in a row. But again, I didn't think we would have 3 week 14 buys in a row. They did it again. So that one was a bit of a head scratcher, if you ask me.
George, it feels like doing early road games may actually be good for the younger guys. I mean, this is an extremely young team.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why maybe you'd say, well, being at home, but a lot of the times these guys get to loosen up a little bit on the road. Maybe it allows them to gel a little bit on some of these vacations. I actually don't mind them being on the road a bunch. And then maybe they've had time to like get it all together, form a plan. And then when you get home, because then you're going to get a stretch at the house for a little while. I think maybe this is not a terrible thing.
I agree with that. I think it's a good way to kind of build chemistry, as you kind of alluded to, traveling on the road together, being a roommate in a hotel room, getting some dinner together, talk to each other. I think also a lot of our players are from big programs, man. Jayden played in LSU in the Bayou. They're down there. They have that high energy. They're not scared about being on the field. And some of these guys are true competitors. We have a Heisman Trophy quarterback. Jayden's not scared of that. I think he actually will rise to the occasion as a result of that. So I love that, right? I think sometimes kind of getting into run at FedEx, like I'm a season ticket holder. I love going to the games, but guys, it's half empty. The energy's low. Sometimes it's got the opposing fans in there. It's not a true home field advantage right now. So maybe going on the road, kind of us against the world kind of mentality. They don't know any better. They are young, as you kind of alluded to, Doug. They come in there hungry and they want to win. So I don't mind that at all. I agree.
Louis, we haven't had you on since they took Jayden Daniels.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to kind of talk to you about your favorites and preferences out of the group. Did you have a favorite, and what are your impressions of early Jayden Daniels?
So during the process, especially very early on, I was leaning towards Drake May, but I made it adamant. I was abundantly clear. I was happy with any of the top 3 quarterbacks in this year.
That's how we were here.
Yeah, I think we were too. Yep.
I don't think you can go wrong with any of the 3. And obviously, we'll see how they pan out, and maybe, 1 or 2 will be better than, the other. But at the end of the day, I felt really good. It's rare that you go into a draft sitting at the number 2 pick and you feel good about 3 options. I can't remember the last time that there was a draft like that, 2021, and we saw how bad that thing turned out, right? There's only one of those 5 quarterbacks that went in the first round still with their original team. But I was going to feel good about Caleb, Jayden or Drake. So I'm happy we got the guy. To me, and I had talked to someone who covers college football, and he said that of the 3 quarterbacks, Jayden had the highest floor. And at that time, I hadn't really, delved into the film yet. And after watching it, I was like, he's right. This is the guy that comes in and I think can have the biggest and fastest and most immediate impact, even more so than Caleb Williams. I think he has played more football than any of the other quarterbacks. He's seen more. He's got more starts under his belt. He's been in different offenses. He's been in somewhat of a pro-style offense with Brian Kelly. So you heard during the OTAs, one of the things that Cliff Kingsbury said that stuck out to him was his ability to set protections already. That's something that doesn't usually come along for a rookie quarterback this early, which is why they went out and got Tyler Biadasz, right? You assume that a rookie quarterback is going to need the assistance of a veteran center, to come in, set protections, and do those things, kind of take that off the plate of a young quarterback. Well, they're saying he's already equipped to do that, set the protections and get people lined up where they need to be. And I think that's a byproduct of having over 50 career starts in your collegiate career. So I'm really excited about what he can bring to this team right away, not just the athleticism and what he can do with his legs, but what he can do upstairs, mentally. I think that's a huge part of the game that a lot of people overlook. And I think he's actually ready for that part of the game as well.
You mentioned real quick, George, you mentioned the 50 starts. One of the things that I think a late bye week this year will be good for is he couldn't have played more than 15 games in one season before, right? So he is just by nature going to be playing a lot more football this year than he's ever played before. So I do think there's something to that late buy that might be nice for a kid that probably is going to hit a wall at some point there.
That's a great point. No, so going along with Jayden, I think what I like about him the most is I think he instills the most fear in the NFC East. I was actually talking to Cowboys and Eagles fans over the weekend, and they were scared. Like, Jayden Daniels, we have no idea what's going to come about from him. He has that running element. He's going to put pressure on our defense. We don't know how to react towards that. They were like, we were hoping you selected Drake May because we're more scared of Jayden Daniels. So it's kind of happy to have him there. Louis, to that point, though, I'm going to ask you, what are your expectations for the year? Like, what do you what would be a successful year for the Commanders? I know like wins and losses is an easy marker, but maybe not looking at that. Maybe like growth from the team. What do you see would be a successful year for our coaches, for maybe Jayden Daniels?
This has been a wildly successful offseason to this point. I mean, 100%. Just looking at how they built the front office and turned the roster over. I mean,
today was busy.
Today was another one of those days, right? Like, I mean, this is amazing. And a lot of us haven't experienced this in our lives, watching this thing, but we don't know what an actual competent, efficient, well-built organization even looks like. Like, this is all foreign to a lot of us. Unless you're like 50 plus or maybe 60 years old and you know what the Bobby Beathard, Joe Gibbs connection look like, you don't know what this feels like. So it's amazing. But to speak to the question, when I look at this team and what has been put in front of us in terms of a schedule and some of the expectations, a lot of people, I always tell them to just be wary. So many people are looking at what CJ Stroud did last year and what the Texans did last year.
Which is an outlier.
Yeah, it's a very, very big outlier. Like, it's so unique what they experienced last year. And I also caution people that they had been building that for a couple of years. They already had their general manager. They had been drafting and they had been really building that roster. And they got fortunate now. I'm not saying that they didn't, because we still didn't expect them to do what they did, despite them having started the process already. We're just really starting this process this year, but they found the right coach. We hope we've done the same. They found the right quarterback and they were able to hit the ground running. I just think that people need to be patient with this process, allow it to work. A successful season for me, just find out that you have a quarterback, a franchise quarterback, a guy that we haven't had. I've been a fan of this team since I was 5. I haven't seen a franchise quarterback in my life. The closest we've ever come was Kirk Cousins. I wanted him to stay personally.
Yeah, I agree with you. 100%.
And I've gotten beat up over the years for that. That's fine. I don't mind, taking those lumps. But he's the closest thing we've ever seen to a franchise quarterback here. And we've been in the quarterback wilderness, as I like to call it, for almost the better part of 4 decades. We haven't had an actual franchise quarterback since Joe Theismann.
I agree.
He snapped his leg in half in 1985. So you're literally 4 decades since the last time you had a real franchise quarterback. If you can come away from this rookie season of Jayden Daniels saying, hey, we got our guy, I think everything else kind of just falls into place. Anything else is found money at that point. Whether you make the playoffs or you finish the season winning 5 out of your last 6, or I'm hoping truly that this is more like, I mean, obviously, if we can make the playoffs and do what the Texans did, that'd be great. But if this is like the Lions season a couple of years ago, where they finished hot and you could see it coming, like you're like, hey, look, man, the Lions finished 9-8. They barely missed the playoffs. They went to Lambeau in week 18, beat the Packers, ended their season. Those guys are coming. And then you saw what they did last year, right? Like, that's the kind of season I want to feel like, hey, look out for the Commanders. They're on the rise.
Yeah, exactly. On the rise.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping. But Jayden Daniels is the primary focus. You want that guy to establish himself as your quarterback of the future. No questions asked moving into next year.
It was nice seeing Dan Snyder in the news today and being able to think, I don't care.
Yeah,
that doesn't have anything to do with me. That was nice. That was moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's funny in the analytics world, they're always talking about winning in the edges, finding the little things that add up to big things. Today really felt like one of those days where you see a different in ownership, where they're out spending. They're hiring some of the smartest people from the smartest organizations. They're bringing people from the Lions. They're bringing people from the Ravens. And it feels like they are actually building something the likes of which we have not seen. You talk about a competent quarterback. When's the last time we had a competent GM that was actually doing GM things in Washington?
Yeah. It's been over a
probably the
quarter of a
same
century.
40 years.
It's been over a quarter of a century. I think the last competent general manager we've had was Charlie Casserly. We go, and that's prior to Dan Snyder getting here, right? So when you say when you say quarter of a century, it lets people know how long it's actually been. Like, that sounds way worse than 25 years.
It does. It's
quarter of a century is like, whoa, it's like almost like a shot to the senses. I always make sure I say it that way so they understand how long it's been since we've had competent front office guys running the show. And it just feels remarkable. I said after last season, I said, this will be the second biggest offseason in franchise history because nothing trumps getting rid of Daniel Snyder. So last offseason was the biggest offseason in franchise history because I wasn't sure if I would see it in my lifetime that we'd get rid of him, right? I wasn't sure about that. So to see everything kind of materialize the way that it has and kind of come into focus, I couldn't be more excited and proud. Like, when's the last time we used the word proud and fan and have that be synonymous with Washington Commanders football? I can't remember the last time I've been this proud of our franchise.
I love that you're saying that. It's so real, man. I feel the exact same way. Like, for a year, I'm definitely a diehard fan, just like all of us are here. But it's hard to say that. We weren't proud for a while. We're kind of like, we'd always be in the news. There'd be negative press against us. There'd be so many things that were strikes against us. It does seem kind of positive. That being said, I don't want to be negative here, but I was going to throw this out. This time of year, hope springs eternal. We're all happy here. Things are looking great. Everyone's very optimistic. I'm just curious, over the last year and a half, 2 years, maybe even last month, have you seen any missteps? That's kind of raising your eyebrow right now. Something that you're kind of concerned about. Was it like, big picture things that you hope breaks right for us?
Well, there's one thing of all of the exciting moves that we talked about this offseason. There's been one that always struck me as odd. And look, we don't know what's going to happen. And I'm hoping third time's a charm for this guy, but it's O-line Bobby Johnson. That's the guy that you look at and you go, if we were lining up all the coaches they hired, which one of these guys does not belong? He would be the one you'd pick out, right? I'm, especially being that the offensive line is the one position group that we're like,
exactly.
Still, right? And even after the draft, we're still not sure that enough has been done yet, which I told everyone, look, you're not going to fix
Can't do it all.
Kills this team in one offseason. You have to relax. But so many people are just fixated on you drafted a quarterback. You got to fix this offensive line. And I get that to an extent. But at the end of the day, there's only so much one can do. When you turn over the roster the way that we have, we've got the highest turnover rate of any team in the NFL.
Exactly.
67%. So you're not going to send Ron Rivera his Super Bowl ring?
Of course not. You know what was funny is I was very adamant to switch gears for a second about Ronald Rivera, the things that he had accomplished here. I was like, look, man, because I was a massive Sam Howell guy, that, and I still feel like he can play in this league, and if he was better coached, I think he would have had a chance to succeed here. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is, I was like, hey, you found us a quarterback and you changed the culture. And he's a big military guy. So I was like, thank you for your service, right? You can leave now, right? Salute to him. Thank you for your service. And then by the time we got to the end of last season, I was like, you did nothing here. We're in the same exact spot. That, like, literally the best players on the team were Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Terry McLaurin when he got here, right? There was no Chase Young yet. And Montez Sweat was going into his second year, so we didn't know what he was. So the best players essentially were Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Terry McLaurin when he got here. He left us, and the best three players on the team are Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Terry McLaurin. He came here, we had the second pick in the draft, and the roster was trash. He left here, we had the second pick in the draft, and the roster was trash. So I'm like, what exactly did you accomplish? You definitely won't be getting a Super Bowl ring in the mail, my friend. But when I look at everything that has transpired here, and I'm just so excited about what can happen. But O-line Bobby Johnson is the guy that I look at and say, I'm just not sure if he's the right man for the job. I'm always going to err on the side of giving guys the benefit of the doubt. That's just my personality. I'm an optimist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that third time's the charm for this guy. But I always look when we get players or a coach staff member from another team, I'm always anxious to hear how the other team's fan base kind of receives the move, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I wanted to do was tap in with Bills fans, because Giants fans are going to hate, right?
Yeah, always.
For the most part, they're going to hate.
Yeah.
Like they actually were very complimentary of when we got Nick Gates last year. You're going to love this guy. He's tough, yada, yada, yada. But, yeah, right. All of those things. So I was like, okay, obviously that didn't work out for us, but it's good to hear that kind of feedback. When we got O-line Bobby Johnson, the Giants fan, well, we saw it firsthand. I mean, we've gone against the Giants. We know their offensive line was horrible. He was the architect of that, essentially, and he was the guy kind of spearheading that thing. And then I was like, okay, Bills fans, just tell me that he was really solid for you guys and that, you didn't have any issues with him. And I'll say, you know what? That cancels out the Giants fans' concerns. And they're like, nah, we were really ready for him to leave too when he left. I was like,
yeah, it's not a good look.
That's strike 2, man. So I'm hoping we're not strike 3.
Were good though.
They were solid. The Bills' offensive line, were solid when he was there, but it wasn't anything to write home about. I hope he's the right man for the job. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. He's got a ton of energy, which Dan Quinn loves, juice, right, as they call it. He's got a lot of that, right? So I think that's part of the reason he got hired. And we'll see how he does. We got a lot of stuff. Like we're not void of stuff on the offensive line. Can you find the right 5 guys and fit them into their proper slots and give them an opportunity to protect the investment that was made at number 2 overall?
And we had Zach Selby on, who covers the team, and he was had been out at camp, obviously, and said there's definitely a different energy with Bobby, a younger guy. I think he's not the in-your-face kind of Bill Callahan. And George, correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the feeling that he thought that the players really were digging that.
Yeah, I got that too. Yeah, I got that.
There was definitely a different vibe from like your old school O-line coach. Yeah, but that he brings that energy that you're talking about. Listen, we're talking about offensive lines. So, I mean, we can't not talk about the left tackle position. It feels like they've got the rest of it somewhat sewed up to where you're not that disappointed. People want a new right tackle. I understand that, but he's a fine starter in the league. He's not a above average starter in the league. At left tackle, I'm not sure that I'm buying what Adam Peters is trying to sell as far as Trent Scott and Corin Lucas being the answer. Now, we got Charles Leno 4 years ago at a June 1st cut. We got that coming up. So there may be guys out there, but as it stands, Louis, looking rough at left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking rough at both tackle spots, to be honest with you. Like, I know as the season progressed, Andrew Wiley got better, but he's still a liability. And I would prefer that you take and this is the thing. What is Brandon Coleman, right? That's going to ultimately determine what this offensive line is truly going to look like. If Brandon Coleman is a rookie, can step in, and that's a tall order to ask a young, rookie to come in and play left tackle, but it's been done before. A lot of people are acting as if you can't ask a rookie 3rd round pick to step in as a left tackle. It's not something that's done often in this league, but it's not impossible either. They drafted him for a reason. He's going to get an opportunity to compete. We'll see what he does. The thing I love about the messaging this offseason is that it's all about competition, not the Ron Rivera competition where they've already wrote the starter's name in pen, but they tell us it's a competition, not bringing in Andrew Norwell and
what's his name? I know you're talking about.
Yeah, the other guard.
The other guard.
And forcing them on us, like, and telling us, hey, it's a competition, or telling us that Taylor Heineke is going to get an opportunity to compete, but we know Ryan Fitzpatrick's getting the job, right? It's not those types of situations. It's actually, hey, we're going to put these guys out here. We're going to see who performs the best. And, when the dust settles and the smoke clears, we're going to put the best 5 guys out there. We kind of feel like we know 2 of the 5 positions right now. That's the only 2 that I can say without question. We know who's starting, and that's center and right guard. The other 3 are up for grabs, if you ask me. We have no idea what they're going to do at left guard, left tackle, or right tackle. I mean, I think I'd feel a lot better if Cornelius Lucas was starting at right tackle, and Brandon Coleman was able to give it a go at left tackle. If they felt good about that, I'd feel really good about an offensive line that featured, those 2. And then you just figure out left guard, right? They brought in Nick Allegretti. He's going to compete. And Andrew Wiley, if he's not starting to tackle, he can get a fair shake at guard, right? And so I think we have enough pieces to move around. And don't forget about the 2 guys you drafted last year. We have no idea what Ricky Stromberg or Braden Daniels can provide this team, right? We have no idea if Braden Daniels can actually play tackle, if he can kick inside and play guard. Ricky Stromberg, we heard from guys like Charles Leno Jr. after he was no longer here, hey, they're going to be surprised at what they have in Ricky.
He's interesting to me. He's interesting. Yeah.
So you're not sure. We have stuff, but how good is any of it, and can you find where it best fits is the question.
I've got to re-ask. Jim Nagy's coming on Wednesday about Stromberg. Talked to him after they drafted Stromberg. I said, oh, Stromberg must have been injured because I didn't see him at the Senior Bowl. And he was like, no, we didn't have a draftable grade on Stromberg. So the reviews on Stromberg were interesting coming out that year, particularly as high as we drafted him.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you're right. If they miss on both of those, I guess it doesn't matter, right? All of that is in the rear view. So anything that Ron drafted that works out, I think is a bonus at this point. I just hate looking backwards on any of that. I do think
it's hard not to, though, because Emmanuel Forbes works, right? Like,
I was just going to say that it was interesting. Yeah. Keim got aggregated by an aggregator who aggregated somebody. Okay, so you can follow that. And eventually, the tweet is something like, John Keim says Emmanuel Forbes can't start week 1, and if you go back and listen, it was a conversation. If I recall correctly, this is a conversation he was having with Nikki Jimval, and it was more like he can't be given the week 1 job today.
Yeah.
Right. Like that I think, George, you listened to the show.
Yeah, I listened to it.
He definitely got misquoted, and it sounded crazy. Like
that's not something, John.
It was like nothing is given to Emmanuel Forbes. He's walking in as, he had a rough year last year. He didn't even end the year as a starter. It's wrong to assume he's going to start day 1. That's pretty much what he said.
That's right.
Yeah, that John Keim wouldn't make a definitive statement like that in May. There's no way. So
I wanted to make sure on this show that we at least
clear.
Made sure that we're not going along with any of the nonsense. Yeah. I do think, Louis. I mean, the question does need to be asked: what kind of boost do these guys get just from Joe Witt and Dan Quinn? Like, I mean, it feels like these are the kind of corners that those guys love. Not to mention, I thought it was interesting. I don't know if you guys caught this, but Emmanuel Forbes was asked about Dan Quinn. He said, "I like Dan Quinn. They brought me in for a 30 visit in Dallas," which I thought. Like, now we're talking.
Yeah,
it feels like these dudes are in for big bumps this year simply because of a new scheme and people coaching them.
I said at the time of the hire of both Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. that the biggest beneficiaries were going to be the secondary members, because Joe Witt Jr. at his core is a defensive backs coach. So he was one of the guys that really took that Green Bay defense with Charles Woodson when he won league MVP and they went to the Super Bowl. He was one of those guys that elevated that group, right? And wherever he goes, turnovers follow. He's synonymous with helping create turnovers. You remember, ball is life, right? That's what he's been talking about and preaching this offseason. And I believe him. Like, you look at the Cowboys. Remember what they were? That was one of the worst defenses in NFL history in 2020 under Mike Nolan.
Good call. Yep.
And he gets there in 2021, brings on with him Joe Witt Jr., and the transformation was immediate. And it's not like and I'm aware that Quinn brought in some of his guys from Atlanta that he was comfortable with, but there's a lot of the same guys, right? There's a lot of the same dudes that have been there, especially in the front seven in particular. But they brought a lot of their secondary guys in, and then they drafted some of the guys that we have come to know and love, who have become household names, Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland. And we saw what they've both done, right? When Trayvon Diggs was healthy in 2022, I think he led the NFL in interceptions. I think he was up around the top of the league. And then we saw what Deron Bland did, setting NFL history for the most pick sixes in a single season. It was ridiculous. And Forbes is that type of corner, right? Where, you know, you put him in some zones, you let him key quarterback's eyes, and he's able to drive on the football and take it away. And so I'm hoping that guys like, I think I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think it's too late for Benjamin St-Juste. Going into the last year of his deal, I was never a big fan of his, but we'll see what happens, right? The things that he does well, I don't think necessarily fit what they want to do, right? They want guys that can take it away.
They'd have to
he didn't take it away in college.
They'd have to do press man on his side and some sort of zone match on the other side, right?
And the problem with that is he can't run, right? We saw that last year, right? When he tried to get in guys' faces, that's where he excels, though, is putting his hands on someone at the line of scrimmage, because he's a handsy guy, right? That's how he excelled at the University of Minnesota. I didn't love his game because, you know, you can get away with that in the Big Ten, and you can get away with that with, you know, quarterbacks that are lesser. You get to the NFL and guys are going to make you pay. And we saw that last year. You know, he got beaten some big moments last season. And I don't know if they can help him, but I look at some of the other young players in the secondary and I go, man, Quan Martin, I think is going to be, you know, helped by this.
Where's he play this year?
I think he might be your new starting free safety.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you guys caught it, but Logan Paulson had a podcast with Fred Smoot and Santana Moss. They have a new one out right now. Yeah. And they said that the starting safeties are Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin were starting safeties. Derek Forrest was actually on the bench just for OTAs, but this initial part right now. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I always try to make sure people are aware. It's OTA. It's OTA. It's very early on. Like, you don't want to make too much of, you know, what you're seeing or you're hearing right now. The only thing that you should be, you know, concerned with is how these guys look, right? Like how they feel about, like, the initial reports is that, hey, we got a dude with Jayden Daniels, right? That's what you want to hear, right? Like, we think we got us a stud in Luke McCaffrey. That's what you want to hear this time of the year, right? Like, I'm less preoccupied with where guys are playing, with what groups they're running with, et cetera, because that's all subject to change. But I think Quan Martin is definitely a guy that could see himself, because, again, they liked Quan Martin. This group that they, you know, this coaching staff they already talked about it. They liked Quan Martin coming out of Illinois. They liked Emmanuel Forbes coming out of Mississippi State. So when you think about that, we don't know how the last group felt about Ricky Stromberg and Braden Daniels, right? But we know how they felt about the first two draft picks. They've told us this much. So those are the guys that are going to get opportunities. You know, I don't know how they feel about Defoe, for instance. We don't know how they feel about him. We don't know how they feel about any of the guys that were here previous, other than the first two draft picks from last year and the guys that they brought in. Clearly, they brought them in. So I'm not sure what to expect from some of the other guys, but they have talent, that's for sure, right? So when I look at the secondary in particular, I say to myself, there are some talented guys back there that can run, that can hit, that can do some of the things that you would like to see some of these guys be able to do, that maybe be able to create some turnovers. They're going to be coached hard, right? That's Joe Witt Jr.'s MO. He's going to coach these guys hard. One of the things we've lacked in the secondary in particular, especially last year, was the fundamentals, right? You know, proper leverage, breaking down, making tackles. How many runs did we see pop for 50, 60 yards that, as Jack Del Rio would say, should have been capped at 8 yards, right? 12 yards. It was bad last year. We were really bad. Like the Patriots game, Ramondre Stevenson has never had a run over 30 yards. We gave up a 54-yard touchdown run to Ramondre Stevenson. Like, That's the kind of stuff we were on last year. So he's a stickler, he being Joe Witt Jr., for tackling, like doing the fundamental things correctly. I'm so anxious to see that. And then Dan Quinn, I've always admired his defenses because it's 11 hats to the football. When you watch a Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn coach defense, I expect to see guys flying to the football, something that we just haven't seen in Washington since the days of, dare I say, Greg Williams, right?
That's where I'm concerned about with Emmanuel Forbes, guys, for both of you. I think I was actually surprised that he had that 30 visit with Dallas because he is undersized, and Dan Quinn habitually gets these oversized cornerbacks. Like Richard Sherman, he's 6'3", 220-pound guy. Like, he likes that size in regard to that. And then on top of that, Emmanuel Forbes wasn't a willing tackler in the run game, at least from my perspective, from me watching film. I don't know if you guys feel that way. So 11 hats on the ball, seeing that whole run support, I'm kind of curious about how Forbes is going to fit in there. I don't know if he's going to be a every play starter, maybe more deployed in packages from my perspective. I don't know if you guys agree with that at all.
They saw that turnover production and get excited.
That's true.
I mean, I think that's really what it is. That's why you bet on these outliers, because you're right. The size, it doesn't usually work, but the production was there in the SEC against big time programs, and I think you try to convince yourself, I'll take 8 interceptions a year, Emmanuel Forbes, than not. I mean, that's the only reason I can. That's the only reason I think he's still there, and why he probably got those visits is just because of the production.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of teams see that as a transferable trait. You know, you take it away in the best conference in college football, and that's been his thing in high school, right? You know, he was an offensive, defensive guy, so the ball skills are legit. And you just see that as a transferable trait. And you say, hey, this is something this kid's done his entire life since high school. He's been a guy that can take it away. So we think he can do it at the next level. And you bet on that. And you hope that all the rest of those things kind of, are up to par, at least. You can deal with some of the deficiencies. You'll deal with being 175 pounds or whatever he is, soaking wet. If he can take the ball away. Exactly. So, yeah.
Bigger concern for you, Louis, the wide receiver room or the secondary?
I think it's the secondary. I mean, because there's still a big unknown there. I love Mikey Sane still, right? I love him. He was one of my favorite players in the draft. So to get him, I talked about him, last year when he was, playing for the Wolverines, and to see us get him, I was like overjoyed. I think he's going to give us our best nickel since Kendall Fuller 1.0, right? We were thinking we might have the best nickel in football, and then he gets traded for Alex Smith, and we really haven't solved the position since. So I'm excited about that. I personally, and I've said this, I might have even said this to you, Doug. I don't know if we talked since then, but I said I think Michael Davis, because he was another one of the guys that I predicted they go after, right, this offseason. I think he's going to have a Ronald Darby 2020 type season for us this year.
Tell me a little bit about Davis, because I'm unfamiliar, and I guess he is the guy pushing Forbes for work. Tell me a little bit about him, please.
Oh, he's going to start. He's going to start. Now, the question is who's starting opposite of him, if you ask me. I think he's
where did we pick him up from?
So we got him from the Chargers. So he's had an up and down career to this point. Okay. So anybody will tell you, he came from BYU in that program. He's a tall, long press, man-to-man cover corner, right? Wants to get in your face, delete the airspace. The guy can flat out run, ran a 4.34, something like that when he came out. Speed is the last thing to go. When you're fast, right? Ask Darryl Green, right? He can still go, right? So he can run. He's got length. He's got everything you're looking for in the kind of corner that they want to probably deploy. The thing with him has been consistency. 2020, he was outstanding. 2021, not so much. 2022, you could argue he was one of the best corners in football in 2022. Okay. 2023, I thought the entire Chargers defense struggled, and their coach was kind of it was a microcosm of their head coach, right? He was struggling. Brandon Staley was struggling. Similar to Ron Rivera here, right? You could see it. You could see the stress. You could see what it was doing. He was, struggling as a play caller, and I think it just kind of permeated to the players. And I think he was one of the guys that really didn't take well. it'd be 3rd and 4, and they got Michael Davis playing 7 yards off the ball, and that's not his skill set.
We're used to that,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, we're used to that here.
We're
We've
used
seen
to
that
that. Yeah, exactly.
for many years, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Chargers fans used to go crazy about that kind of stuff, and
Mhm.
I think he's going to be really good. I think he's going to be Ronald Darby 2020 for us, where we were like, man, we weren't expecting that, right? Ronald Darby came in, he was you could argue the best player on the defense, definitely the best player in the secondary that year, and it was just for 1 year. And I think Michael Davis is here just for 1 year, and I think he's going to play well. So outside of him, and same with still, I got questions. Right. I mean, and even with Michael Davis, I've got questions, but I feel confident, a little bit more confident than probably most do. I had suggested they go after Frankie Louvu, and I suggested that they go after Jeremy Chin. I didn't think they would do it, but I said these are the kind of guys Dan Quinn, when he got here, he gave me the ingredients of what he was looking for. So I could go shopping. So I said, all right, you've given me the ingredients that you need. I'll go shopping. And what I came back with was Jeremy Chin, Frankie Louvu, and Michael Davis, among others. I suggested Bobby Wagner, but I was like, he doesn't want to come
Never
here.
gonna happen.
Yeah,
Right. And I was shocked that he actually came here. So I think they've done a really good job of getting players that fit what they want to do defensively. The receiver room, I know a lot of people are kind of concerned about it because Jahan hasn't stepped up yet.
I was going to say, is Jahan rookie Jahan, or are you getting last year Jahan?
Yeah, I've never wavered on Jahan. I don't blame any of the players for last year's debacle on offense.
Fair enough.
Okay, yeah. That's like a red shirt year almost. Like I just give everybody a pass. Like, okay, I'm grading last year on a massive curve.
It's incredible how poorly that went.
That was. I've been wrong about a lot of things, and I've allowed myself to have the wool pulled over my eyes several different times through the years. I don't know if I was ever bamboozled more than last year with Eric.
I think a lot of us were.
He got a lot of folk.
Yeah.
I was so high on the fact that he was going to take the pieces that we had and give us a shot. And what he did was he systematically broke Sam Howell, and he took guys that were respected. I mean, think about Terry McLaurin for a second. This fan base loves Terry McLaurin. There were people questioning whether this guy was even a number one receiver last year on this roster. I heard people saying crazy stuff like, we need to get rid of Jahan Dotson. He stinks. And I was like, wait a minute. What is going on right now? But that's what happens when you bring somebody in who is unwilling to adapt, which is why Cliff Kingsbury getting here, and the first thing he says is, I'm going to adapt and adjust to the players that we have, to the talent that we have. Like when people keep saying, hey, he's going to run the air raid, and he's like, yeah, but I'm going to adapt. Like, I don't know how the offense is going to look yet because I still haven't got my hands on the talent. I'm like, yes.
Louis, I was going to ask you about that. So, like, from the national perspective, I like to listen to different perspectives as well, right? Mm-hmm. So, Cliff Kingsbury seems like he's polarizing. People seem to either love him and think they're going to he's going to help out Jayden the same way he helped out Kyler Murray. Yeah. Some people also think that he gets stale and the season kind of goes on and things go bad with him. You were touching on that. Are you a fan of Cliff Kingsbury? How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm a massive fan of Cliff Kingsbury.
Okay.
And here's why. People act as if you can't adapt and adjust. You don't think he learned from his experience in Arizona? He did some really good things in Arizona. So you take some of those things that you were able to use and get the most out of those things. You bring them along with you. You fit them, you tailor them to the skill set of a Jayden Daniels, because he's not the same guy as Kyler Murray, right? But you also learn from those experiences that didn't go well. Some of the things, and also I think another thing that people don't take into consideration with Cliff Kingsbury is he was a head coach.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more responsibility when you're a head coach. Like, I look at Chip Kelly, who has been a head coach for many years. That man went back to being an offensive coordinator. He was the head coach at UCLA. He's now the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Why? Because he didn't want the responsibility of being a head coach anymore, right? I just want to coach offense. I just want to draw up plays and have fun, right? Cliff Kingsbury can now just focus in on, like, I was watching some of the clips from OTAs and how hands-on he was, right? He's over there going through the motions with Jayden Daniels, showing him this is a former quarterback, right? So he can relate. He can get out there, hands-on, kind of really tell you what he's looking for. And I think he's going to be great for this young offense and the nucleus of what we're trying to build. And I love how they built the staff, because a lot of people kept saying when he got the job, oh, he doesn't want to be a head coach anymore. No, he doesn't want to be a head coach right now. Okay. 2 years of success here, and he's gone. Someone's going to snatch him up. And I'm glad that we've put in place a number of guys that can potentially take over if he were to have success. You don't have to uproot the offense, right? So I like Cliff Kingsbury, and I think he's going to do a really good job of maximizing guys like Jahan and Terry and Luke McCaffrey. And Zach Ertz is like, the only reason I'm here is because of Cliff Kingsbury. I wouldn't be about it, right? Like, I came here because this guy tailors his offense to his talent. So you hear that, and I think about Ben Sinnott and all the guys that we have, and Brian Robinson Jr. It might be the biggest beneficiary. Now, it's funny because this group, they came in, and I don't know if they knew he could catch. He showed us he could catch.
He did. I was impressed by him.
And they came in and they acted as if he couldn't catch when they went and got Austin Eckler, which is fine. I love Austin Eckler's addition here, but I think they're going to be surprised at what Brian Robinson can do. He should have got more opportunities. There's no reason that he shouldn't have had 1,000-yard season under his belt already in his first 2 seasons. But he just didn't get enough attempts last year. He didn't get enough carries, opportunities. There were games where he was averaging over 6 yards a carry, and he only got the ball 7 or 10 times. And you just got, why did we get away from the run again? That's not here.
EB.
Exactly.
I'm excited about that backfield though. Like I think you're right. I mean, if you remember back to some of the things that actually happened in Arizona, like James Conner led fantasy football for like 3 years, big numbers. And I forget who the other small back was that was
Chase
there.
Edmonds?
Yep.
Was it Chase Edmonds?
Yep.
Like a guy like that. But yes, it's lots of production in that offense. And we talk about it here on this podcast all the time. By the very last year in Arizona, they were running 2 tight end sets most of the time and getting after it. And also Chrissy Freud, who is a student of the air raid, was on with us. We asked her kind of about what to expect. And I remember her saying, well, she's an interesting cat, first of all. Second, she was like, well, listen, like 90% of air raid plays are in every modern NFL playbook. We just don't call them spreads and air raids anymore. We mix them in. So there's a lot of playbooks are mashups.
Yeah, they are
of concepts that they get from other people. Right? Yeah, absolutely. You see something you like, you steal it. Right?
Exactly.
They call it a copycat league for a reason. Like, it's amazing. People like to put labels on everything, but most of these playbooks are malleable. You adapt and you adjust. You see something you like it, you integrate it into your playbook. Right? I listened to Chip Kelly talk about that. He's like, sometimes though you can do too much, because if you want to bring something in, sometimes you have to get rid of something that you really like to do in order to implement that, because you don't want to put too much. And I think that's more of a college thing. You can put a lot on these NFL players, but in college, it's a lot to overload a 17, 18-year-old that, coming up. But yeah, I think people overblow that. You look at DeAndre Hopkins, he had a massive, stretch there when Cliff was there. You look at AJ Green, and even though he was at the tail end of his career, he had some solid season or two in there. Zach Ertz was, where he's at now is kind of going towards the twilight of his career, and he still had some good years there. So I think you're going to see him really take advantage. And to your point, James Conner, I didn't even know James Conner could do the things that he did when he left Pittsburgh.
I was like, anybody did actually.
He's basic, and he goes to Arizona, and he looked like he was at Pitt again, right? So yeah.
So one thing with Austin Eckler, I'm kind of happy with. I feel like he's going to be kind of a coach on the field to our young running backs. Like, I think Brian Robinson is more talented than him at this point in their career. I think he's probably a better runner. I think Austin Eckler is going to bring pass protection, kind of show him how to do that. I think he's going to show them route running specifically, how to be crisp in regard to that too. So that's cool. Yep. And then in regard to Cliff Kingsbury, just not being divided, I think he can focus on the offense solely, right? Instead of having to watch the defense, instead of having to go that nightly event to kind of, pitch something about the, Joe Gibbs or whatever, like Commander's PR
lot of
kind of thing,
responsibilities for the head coach.
he can focus more on just focusing on the offense, which I do appreciate. So I think some upside there.
All right, Louis, we ask everybody the same thing. In case we don't talk to you again before the season starts, the line is at 6.5. You like the over or the under on this one?
So when the line first came out, I think it was 7.5 when it first came out. I went nuts. I was like, wait a minute, am I tripping? Did I miss something? I'd done a whole video on the over under, like, whoa, 6.5 is, I think that's a really good number. I'm over, but just slightly. 7 is the number for me, right? I think this is a 7-win team. Here's the thing. This defense is going to be really good. I haven't been this adamant about the defense being good in a long time. The pieces that they put in place, some of the pieces that were already here before they got here. I'm excited about watching what they're able to do with this defense. I think this defense is going to have us in ball games every single week. Unlike last year where you knew we were giving up 30, the question is, were we giving up 40, right?
Mm-hmm.
How bad was it going to get? How soon was it going to get bad? This year, we're going to be in ball games. We're going to have a shot. And the thing that's always been our, bugaboo is we can't score. Right. I don't know when the last time we've averaged over 21 points a game. I can't tell you.
Probably Griffin, probably, right? Or maybe
Cousins.
Yeah,
one of those years with Kirk, right? Maybe Kirk's last year, 17, maybe. Maybe Alex Smith, but it got really bad after he got injured and we couldn't score. So I don't know if they made it over that threshold, but it's been a long time. I just said all that to say this. So I don't know if we're going to be able to score. The jury's out on the offense and what will actually happen because you have a rookie quarterback and you have to take that into consideration. But I do like Cliff Kingsbury and I do think we have talent. I do think that offense can do some things. It'd be very helpful if the defense created turnovers and short fields and things of that nature. And, the new rules on special teams. We'll see if we have a return guy that can actually give us a spark there too. But when it's all said and done, we'll be in games in the fourth quarter. And that's all I ever asked for as a fan. A chance in the fourth quarter. Whatever happens, but you just want to be in a game. You just want to have a shot. And I think we will. Will the ball bounce our way? Will we be able to make the plays in those critical, crucial moments that, swing the ball game and the pendulum of a season or a game, et cetera, et cetera? I think we're a young team and, we'll have our fair share of, close misses. And when it's all said and done, I'd said the number is 6 to 8 wins for me. Right, this year is where I have us. That's the window, and I think we're going to hit the middle of that 7. So I take the over right now. Looking at the schedule, I think it's a doable schedule, right, to get you to 7, possibly 8 wins. And again, if the ball bounces your way, you sneak up and beat a team or two you have no business beating, and you take care of the ones you're supposed to. Who knows, right? The first thing is take care of the division. We've lost every single game in the division last year. It's an embarrassment. Like,
it is embarrassing for sure.
In the division, first and foremost. So start there, then start beating some of the teams that you're supposed to beat. And I say that very loosely because, again, teams look at us like food when they see us on the schedule. But, we got to start thinking with that mindset of, hey, we should beat Carolina. We should beat. Especially these are games at home. I know home hasn't meant much of anything. We were one of the worst home teams last season. Hopefully, now that it's Commanders Field, maybe it'll be different. I don't know, right? I'm reaching here, but at the end of the day, 7 is the number for me.
Louis, in order to hit the ceiling, let's remove Jayden Daniels from the equations. I think that's a kind of the easy one there. What would Washington need to do to hit on in order to reach that ceiling of maybe 8, maybe 9 wins or something in regard to that? Like, is it the defense really taking another step forward? Is it a position group that stands out? Like, what needs to hit?
Did they win 3 games last year?
At home? They're 1-7 at home last year.
Or just in general, how many wins did they have?
4.
4
and 13.
So 8 would be double. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my thing is turnovers.
Yeah,
that's what's gonna be. I call it the great equalizer. Turnovers change everything.
Yeah,
and it's not just getting turnovers; it's not turning it over yourself too, right? So Jayden Daniels, 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He didn't turn it over in his entire collegiate career, going all the way back to Arizona State. He was never a big turnover guy. So we just saw a massive increase in the touchdown passes. but he was never really a big turnover guy. I think the most interceptions he threw was maybe 12 in his career. So he's not a big turnover guy. So he's going to take care of the football. We hope that's going to continue at the NFL level. We expect to bake in some turnovers from being young and seeing different things. But if he can take care of the football, if we can not turn it over as much, win the turnover battle most weeks, and when we look up at the end of the season, go, wow, we were +6 in the plus-minus category, that's going to give us a chance to maximize this season, especially if some of those turnovers put us in plus territory. And so now you don't have to go, like, one of the biggest issues of the Rivera era, going all the way back to Scott Turner, was that we had to go 12 plays, 75 yards.
Yep.
13 plays, 83 yards. Like, it always was a marathon drive. And if anything goes wrong on a drive, and that goes for almost any NFL team,
exactly.
Except, the Ravens and the Chiefs and teams like that are very explosive. Anything goes wrong, a batted ball, a holding penalty, offsides, a false start, or whatever, it could derail the drive just like that, right? We weren't equipped to overcome, 2nd and 14. We just weren't built that way.
Yeah.
So if you can get a drive that starts at the opposing team's 38-yard line, you don't even have to get a first down at that point. You just get 6 yards, you're in field goal range, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff that we need to have happen for us now.
I agree.
If we can have that happen, take care of the football, create turnovers, shorten the field for a young quarterback and an offense that's just getting started, that would do wonders for this football team. Give this defense a chance to play. One of the things that used to bother me with Jack Del Rio is, Tressway would punt his ass off, and we'd pin somebody inside the 5. And all you're looking for there, okay, you don't have to cause a turnover. Just get 3 and out. Right? And you're going to get great field position. And we give up 2 or 3 first downs. They flip the field position, and now we got to go 86 yards again. Right? Come on, you just had one job to do, right? This defense, I think, is going to be able to do that, right? You pin somebody at the 3-yard line, they might get 4 yards. They got to punt. The punter's looking for space on the back line, trying to get it off so it doesn't get blocked. And now you're fielding the punt at the 46-yard line plus territory, right? You get a 5-yard return, you're starting at the 41-yard line, right? You're almost already in field goal range. That's the kind of stuff that we need to have happen for us. And we have to take advantage of short fields and opportunities, hidden yardage, stuff. Like, we've been terrible on special teams with penalties. We feel like that same example that I just gave you, where we field a punt and it's fair caught at the 46, or we return it for a 2-yard gain, but it's a holding on the play. And now you back up 10 yards. The next thing you know, you're starting at your own, 45-yard line. And, what should have been this or that, or you field it at the 49, right? But you got a holding penalty, or, somebody did something stupid, like they were running out of bounds, the whole time. And you're like, what are you doing, dude? And now,
mental mistakes. We weren't crisp, man. Yeah, I agree with you, man. Got to play sharper.
Getting yardage kills you. You know what I mean? We just got to be, because we're not good enough to just win off of sheer talent. We have to do the little things correctly. So turnovers, I think, is going to be the ultimate key.
I usually pick something stupid like 11 or 12 wins. I promise I'm not going to do that.
Me too. I've been guilty of it the last 3 years, so you're not alone. Well, 2 years, the last 2 years. I didn't think we were going to be good the Ryan Fitzpatrick year.
Louis, you're the best buddy. You know that. Is that hat available in the gift shop?
Yes, it is. It definitely is. Among other things, there's still some. Hey, I got a lot of NHL hats, New High Order hats left too. If anybody's interested, so a lot of stuff.
We're on sale right now.
Ron's playing shirts in there too. It's a lot of bad merchandise that I probably need to mark down to like $1 or $2 now to try to get rid of it. But yeah, these hats are definitely.
Hat's fine. I'm getting ready to go get one as soon as we're done here, buddy. I appreciate you.
Hey, always a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Appreciate it, man. Peace.